بنمای روح که باغ و گلستانم آرزوست بگشای لب.
Hey, what's up, y'all? My name's Paul Miller, aka DJ Spooky, that Subliminal Kid. I'm here to talk about my new album, The Secret Song. It's a music and film project with a special limited edition DVD. The album is inspired by philosophers, it's inspired by economists, and it's inspired by the history of jazz, dub, rock, and above all, a will to bring them all together. If you think about what sampling is, it essentially is about collage. It's an art practice based on centuries of taking text out of context and playing with what the juxtaposition of radically different materials is all about. So when Thomas Edison came up and popularized the idea of the phonograph in the 19th and early 20th century, some revolutions in sound happened. What ends up going on is the record player and the performance, really end up blurring. And here we are in the beginning of the 21st century where I think for most normal consumers, the iPod has changed the way that they listen to music. The album, as we know it, is kind of under immense pressure to just maintain what we normally would think of as a coherent statement. When I was coming up with this idea of The Secret Song, one of the other nicknames for the album was based on Adam Smith's concept of the invisible hand. He wrote about this in The Wealth of Nations. It's a classic of economics. One of the other inspirations for the album was Thorstein Veblen's theory of the leisure class. When you think about jazz, you're not necessarily thinking about economics, but when you think about music, you gotta really factor that in because musicians are in an economy that's changing rapidly. The idea of the independent producer, which is yours truly, is becoming more and more part of how people think of the everyday process of what it means to be a musician and artist in the 21st century. One of the things that I'm fascinated with is how over the last 8 years with the quote-unquote war on terror, you've been seeing this idea of radical divisions and ideologies, both from the left and right in the US, but above all with this idea of dividing America from a lot of the rest of the world. The Secret Song is kind of a pun about globalization. I really think of it as something that we're connecting some hidden dots between radically different cultures. What I wanted to do with The Secret Song was come up with an idea, thinking about sound and economics, and make a story out of it. So nobody was in the same room. In fact, many people were on different continents. We have one of my all-time favorite singers, a woman by the name of Suzanne Dehim. She does the lead single on the album. It's called Azadi, which means simply freedom in Farsi. It's a song that's a meditation on the Iranian elections through the prism of one of my favorite poets, Rumi, who's a stunning poet from several centuries ago, who's a kind of a classic of Iranian poetry. One of the other songs in the album, the title song, The Secret Song, is statements about economics from radically different economists, and we translated it into Mandarin. And I had an amazing young writer named Jing Zhu translate that and then sing it. Rob Swift, who's one of my all-time favorite turntablists, does amazing scratch routines. We took a lot of different records and spiced and diced it from Jamaica to New York and back again. So you'll hear some dub, some materials taken from all sorts of voices from TV commercials and stuff like that. Led Zeppelin's one of the most sampled bands in hip-hop, but in their own right, they covered and appropriated a lot of blues. So doing a dub version of Led Zeppelin's Dazed and Confused, also No Quarter, was kind of a fun way of updating the 21st century take on that process of appropriation. Radiohead also gets a dub treatment, and they're one of my favorite bands as well. They have kind of the art rock take on things, and doing a dub version of that was real fun. You have a vocalist and spoken word poet like Mike Ladd doing hip-hop take on kind of propaganda and what we like to call the manufacture of consent. There's Vijay Iyer, who's a really interesting Indian composer. There's Abdul Smooth, who's Indian as well. Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth, the Jungle Brothers, and one of my all-time favorite old-school African hip-hop groups, Zimbabwe Legit. And one of the other lead singles of the album is one of my all-time favorite hip-hop groups, The Coup. You get a jazz, you get a little bit of rock, you get a little bit of noise. The key that connects all of the dots here is that the studio is the instrument. Sound, art, literature, those are all things that get straight into the mix of my work. I think art and music are compellingly connected. There's nothing that separates them, absolutely nothing. So there's a DVD that goes with this new album, and it's called Kino Glas, which translates from the Russian simply as The Cinema Eye. It's a film made by one of my favorite filmmakers, Dziga Vertov, in 1924, and he's a figure who championed this idea of montage cinema, which is parallel to the same techniques and methods we use to make tracks in DJ culture, which is collage and sampling. The film was commissioned by the Russian government right after the Russian Revolution to document the radical changes that the revolution had, kind of woven into the everyday life of people. What I'm doing here is updating it to the era of YouTube and thinking about the score in its own right as a kind of instrumental hip-hop take on this idea of revolution and change. What I'm trying to do is think of this album as a kind of an essay. I want people to kind of think of an essay in the style of William S. Burroughs, though, something where it's like collaged and cut up and really crazy. Because that's the way life is. It's not normal. And walking down any street in America, you have to put the question to yourself, in the 21st century, what is the sense of normal music? The mix is what makes this a real, vibrant experience. It's what makes me live and breathe and feel like I want to get out of bed in the morning. It's not just about making pure hip-hop, but saying that the world is a complex and compellingly linked place. With this album, I wanted to just do a much more personalized take on literally working in a home studio environment downtown New York, and come up with some ideas that I felt represented a musical kind of, meditation on the last 8 years of what's been going on. So we have the financial crisis. We have the first African-American president. We've had 8 years of this quote-unquote war on terror. And what that's done to people's ideas around music and culture and art is, I think, on one hand, it's made a really intense mirror to hold up to society. How do we connect these dots? How do we give people music that takes them both deep into the heart of what it means to experience life in New York, but also to say maybe it's not all about America and let's get out of this whole hip-hop New York-centric thing. It's a bit of a paradox. Music is never an end result where you just press play. I want you to actually, or hope you actually, get into it enough to play with it in your own right. So thanks for checking The Vibe. Once again, Paul Miller, aka DJ Spooky, New York, downtown, 2009. Peace.